going to be contact party, you be covered.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Let's use driver's license and registration, please.
Truck pop! Truck pop! Stop! Hands in the air! Hands in the air! Drop the gun! 228 shots fired. Suspect down.
The Wilmer Police Department was recently able to acquire a use-of-force training system through a company called TI Training. And that video system is full screen that plays different scenarios. It came preloaded with over 800 different scenarios where officers can use to make different use-of-force decisions. And you know, it's a tool that we feel is very valuable for our officers to be able to develop responses, appropriate responses to cases where they may have to use physical force, pepper spray, taser, all the way up to the use of a firearm. And by getting this type of a system, we want to increase our officers' ability to deal with different situations in different manners. We always want to use the lowest level of force possible, but this gives them a few more tools for their toolbox to be able to resolve situations and do so safely and quickly.
Drop the gun, please! Stop! 228 shots fired. Suspect dead.
The weapon systems that we use in this are actual handguns that the police department owns, but they've got a different barrel that's put in, so it won't accept an actual cartridge. You can't actually fire a real bullet through it. But it fits in an actual weapon, so it'll fit in our holsters, and the security devices can be snapped then. The computer can be programmed so that it will only fire the same number of rounds that an actual weapon would fire. So it's not like Hollywood where you can go on shooting forever and not run out of bullets. The CO2 cartridge in the magazine can be taken out, replaced. The weapon can be manipulated the same way as a regular weapon to show a reload like you would do in real life too. So it just adds more realism to the scenarios. So this is an actual duty weapon that's been fitted with a laser insert barrel, and then this is the magazine has actually got a CO2 cartridge in it, so that will simulate the recoil on a weapon. So when you've got it in place there, now every time you pull the trigger, it'll give a recoil to make it more realistic. The nice part about this use-of-force system, it isn't just a firearms-based system. So with this, you can pick like a pepper spray, and it's a container that actually has a laser in it. If you spray it on the screen, on the face of the bad guy on the screen, they may react to it, and when we've played out some of those scenarios, they may drop the weapon that they have or freeze in place, put their hands up to their face and collapse, just like somebody that's been pepper sprayed may. Same with a taser is that when you shoot that taser, it'll show where the probe hits, if it's effective or not. They'll actually freeze up like they would with a taser, drop over, you know, so they try and simulate that the best they can too. Okay, don't make me use a taser.
Scratch your head.
Okay, get down, you're under arrest, you're under arrest. Taser, taser, taser. Stay where you are, stay where you are. Calling for backup. I'm going to have somebody else go put the handcuffs on. One neat thing about this system is that you can take any scenario that's in the system and you can make it a low light incident, so you can dim it down so that it's more difficult to see. You can also turn it into a nighttime scenario where it's nearly black, and there's a special flashlight that comes with the system that when you aim it at the screen, wherever you're pointing, the flashlight on the screen will show the image like you've got a light beam going there. So you can simulate going through a warehouse and searching at night. That helps officers with some of their flashlight techniques when you may have both hands tied up using a flashlight. It also, if you shine it in a suspect's face, that can be used to an advantage of, you know, taking their night vision away and that type of thing too, and the suspect may react to that in the right scenario also.
Alright, so this one, you're basically just out doing some foot patrol in a sketchy looking alley.
All of our instructors are use-of-force instructors with the police department, so they either are firearms instructors, unarmed defensive tactics instructors, taser instructors, or a combination. And they will go through those scenarios with people, and the exact same scenario can generally be played out several different ways. What the instructor will do at the computer screen is they can select based on maybe the commands that the officer's giving, whether they're behind cover, what weapon that they've selected, whether it's pepper spray or a firearm. They may branch out into something different in the scenario. So as you saw on the screen, we can have the same scenario play out where one time the person pulls out a knife and charges at you. The exact same scenario, the next time the person pulls out their ID and hands it over to you, or they run away, or they pull a firearm and shoot at you, or shoot another person. So each different scenario of the 800 can branch out into probably about a half dozen more per scenario also.
Drop it! Drop it! Police! Drop the gun now!
Cop, I'm a
Drop
cop.
the
The guy
gun!
just shot someone.
Drop the gun now! Drop it!
Relax.
Drop the gun!
He just shot
Hands in
somebody.
the air! Hands in the air!
One thing that we looked at when we bought into this system was that they send out new updates quarterly from the company, and they try and be timely with the topics of what's happening in real life. So the last update that we got had probably about a dozen new scenarios that they were based in places of worship. So it took place in churches where it would be maybe dealing with a hostile person that was talking to a minister. It might be with a suicidal person in the church, an active shooter, a suspicious person in the parking lot by a church. Just some things like that. So that's one nice thing is with this, it's updated on a continual basis, and then they try and be as timely as possible with things that are happening in the real world. And what's wild too is, like we talked about, is that with the right video equipment and everything, you could film scenarios in locations in Wilmer. It could happen in the gas station parking lot, Walt's parking lot, and you could film different scenarios, send it in, they would edit it, send it back to you, and then you've got live things happening at the Candy Mall or at the Civic Center or at, Burger King or something like that in Wilmer.
228 shots fired, suspect hit.
When officers use a simulator, a lot of it isn't necessarily going through the scenarios. A lot of time isn't spent on that. But when they do go through a scenario, they spend a lot of time talking with the instructor about different things, everything ranging from, when a threat appeared, did they move behind cover to a position of safety? Did they simulate calling for help on their radio? Did they get an ambulance en route? We expect all of our officers to be very well versed on federal law, state law, and department policy regarding all levels of use of force, especially deadly force. But they will review each of those with the officer, and the officer has to justify to the instructor why they took the action they did. With this, we expect that we're going to kind of work this into the rotation. We don't have it set X number of times per year yet, but we imagine this will be probably at least a 2 or 3 times a year type thing for our department to go through the different scenarios, just to show proficiency. Again, we may spend an hour training them in that classroom, but for the next 3 days afterwards, their minds are going to be processing those scenarios, maybe different ways it could have been handled or ways they could improve, and go from there.
Miss your hands! Miss your hands! Sir, drop the gun! Drop the gun!
I think the big benefit to our department and our officers is it's going to enhance officer safety by giving them more good decision-making skills under pressure. Just practicing that, fortunately, you have to do some in real life, but you don't do a lot of this in real life, so the next thing we can do is simulate it. So that it has a better chance at enhancing officer safety, which in turn more safety for the public, because we always want to respond with the lowest level of force that we can on any given incident, and this should give officers more tools for the toolbox to be able to do that.